Hi, my name's Rod. I'm an installer with Jetmaster fireplaces, and today we're going to show you how to install a universal Jetmaster open wood or gas fireplace in a room without any existing fireplaces. I'm going to install this Jetmaster in a plasterboard single-story application, and we're going to show you how we use minimal brickwork, or in this case, Hebel. It's a lightweight aerated concrete block. It's a minimum of 75mm thick. Right, let's get started. Let's go through the componentry. What we have here is it's a 700D universal Jetmaster box, D for deep. Here we have the gather, we have the flues, we have the stainless steel inner flue or active flue, the outer galvanized flue. We have our bends here, both inner and outer. Noisy. We've got our aquasil or flashing for metal roofs. Excuse me, here we have the cowl. It's called the stationary cowl. And also we have the insulation. Now we'll talk about that later. Right, let's get going. What we're doing here is the base of the fireplace. As you can see, we need to measure up the size of the box and allow the thickness of the Hebel on either side of the box to allow for the firebox to sit comfortably on here. Now what I'm using here is a non-combustible material. These are like pavers. You can use anything really, but it has to be a natural product, non-combustible. Now I'm raising this base 55mm, which will suit the height of the half that's going to be sitting in front of the box. Now with models 700D and lower, you need to raise it to a minimum of 32mm. Models 850 or higher has to be 100mm. Now on top of this surface, I'm in fact going to put a nice flat surface, and that once again still needs to be a non-combustible material, and this in this application I'm using FC, which is fibrous cement. That, and also please make sure that the surface is leveled across and the depth. In this case it's spot on. Right, now we can start with the installation of the firebox and the Hebel insulating the firebox itself. Well, now we're going to start laying the Hebel. Well, it's going to be the first stage of the Hebel process. You want to make sure that you have the Hebel away from the wall 25mm minimum, and it's particularly being a combustible wall. If in fact this is a brick wall, this is a different application, you can go right up to it. Now you want to also make sure that you have the right amount of Hebel before you even start mixing the adhesive for the Hebel. In some cases you need up to 30 blocks, and the blocks come in 600 by 200 by 75mm minimum thick. Right, well let's get started with the laying. In making sure that you have the right amount of Hebel blocks, also it'd be advisable to do your cuts to suit the dimensions of your base. So you do full block, and then you do your cuts, so forth. And they're really easy to cut. I'm using a Hebel saw, which you can acquire from, I suppose, a hardware store. And of course my faithful builder's pencil. I need to cut 370mm to allow for the span of my hearth. So I'll mark it. And as you can see, it's really easy. Always look down on the saw. Let's start laying. Now this is the adhesive for the Hebel. You can purchase the adhesive in any hardware store. I'm using adhesive specifically designed for aerated concrete blocks, but you can also use masonry adhesive. Right, you just apply it to the base. I'm going to lay now the first, the second one. I've already laid the first, but I'm just scoring like that. Nice bead, and a nice bead on this side, like so. And also, of course, almost forgot, is the sides. Yep. Right. And let's now we stick it together, like so. And that there is the back part of the heble, and also wouldn't hurt to use extra adhesive to cover any holes at the bottom and the joints as well. And there you go. Now the next one, of course, it's like laying bricks, I suppose. You stagger the heble like you would a brick wall. You overlap, and there you have it. And really, it doesn't take long for this to dry. Clean off the excess, and then continue on. Right. Next, we'll show you the next stage with the firebox. And now for the insulation. I would advise to put it in at this stage. What you do is you tuck it into position. It's got it actually sort of almost adheres by itself. You don't need any adhesives for it. Just make sure that it's all nice and tucked in. Tuck it into the corners, right up to the edge. The insulation is well, the insulation, what it does, it retains the heat around the box, which is really something that helps the functionality of the fireplace and the heating process of the room. Okay, I'll do the top section here. And cut it off. Right. And now we'll put in the box. Now that you've got your box in, it's time to put the gather on. The gather accommodates the fluing. Let's go. Right, now we're going to put the gather on. In position, you line it up, and you'll use the nuts and bolts that come with the firebox. It's advisable to put the thread in from the outside and the nuts from the inside, like so. So you'll feel for the hole here, line it up with the existing hole, find it, feed that through, and then if you can see that, you get the nut and you can screw it in from the inside. Now you just need to do it finger tight. You don't need to use a spanner or a shifter or a ratchet. That's it, and that's enough on both sides. Now what all that does is stabilises the gather so it doesn't slide off. And there you go, easy. And now we'll do the flues. Now we're going to fix the stainless steel inner flue or active flue onto the collar of the gather. Pre-drill it. I use a 1/8 drill bit. I change it over, and then I use a self-tapping hex bit. Or you can use pop rivets, but I like screwing them in. Like so. Then, because you can't get your fixing on this side, I'd continue the process at least in 3 sides, making sure that the flue is nice and level. Oh, sorry, plumb. Now we're going to cut the ceiling. The ceiling being a plasterboard ceiling, we need to cut the diameter of the hole to accommodate the flue larger than the flue itself by 50 millimeters. Now the flue we're using is 11 inch, which is 275 millimeters, plus another 50 mil, we've got 325. If you halve that, you got 167 and a half, so let's round it off to 170. So from the mark that we've got in the center, measure out 170, like so. And then what I use is a string line or a chalk line. I get my string line, hold the thumb at the center mark, maybe feed my pencil through like this, and then score it with the pencil right around, and then you have your perfectly round hole. And now we're going to start cutting this gyprock ceiling, praying that there's no studs or joists in the ceiling. But you want to check that first. Anyway, here we go. Now for the outer flue. This is the base of the flue. What we're going to do is cut 4 25 by 25 mil vents to allow ventilation in your combustible chimney breast. Okay, like so. Continue the process all the way around. And now for the crimped side of the flue, the top end of the flue. We're going to show you now we're going to show you how to stabilise the inner flue to the outer flue. What you do is you cut up to 25 mil. Be sure not to cut it right down to the actual beginning of the crimp, just halfway. Cut two slits like that, and then fold this in like that, tap it down, and that would create that space of 25 mil. And you do that all the way around, and then then we can continue on with the flue run. And you can also use screws, in fact, to stabilise the inner and the outer flue as well. But this is the way I like using it. And now the outer flue, you see it's being passed down by a squeak. Right, after you've done that, you continue with the active flue, which is now being passed down to me, and you go over the crimped flue, and then you fix that to the other inner flue that's overlapping it. Once you've fixed that, you continue with the outer flue, and then you fix the outer flue onto the overlapped crimped section. And inside the ceiling space, what you do is you create those air vents, just as it is there at the collar of the gather. So just beyond the ceiling space, you create 25 by 25 millimeter air vents, 4 of, right around the outer flue. And then you can continue your main run, making sure that you fix every flue together. At this point, what we need to do is continue the Hebel 600 mil above the flange of this box up higher. So what I've done here, you can notice I've cut out notches here. Now these notches are accommodating for a lintel. In some cases you don't need a lintel, you can just rest your Hebel directly above the box, but not between the Hebel and the box. You need to insulate it. So what I've done is I've cut a strip like this, and I've got insulation here. I, in fact, will be using a lintel. It's a light gauge metal track, and the actual size of this track is 76 mil wide, which will accommodate the 75 mil Hebel blocks. So like I said, from this point on, we have to go 600 mil up with the Hebel, continue the Hebel, the laying process. So with these penetrations on the side here, use your excess glue or adhesive and just fill up those holes with the adhesive. I would use the remainder of the insulation, and then just being sure to cover around the gather, front, back, and the sides. Also, be mindful that you do not cover the vents that you've cut earlier in the fluing. And once you've done that, and look, you'll know that you certainly have more than enough insulation for this purpose. Right, I've had my lunch. Now that the Hebel is done, the flues are in, the double flues and the firebox, we can continue with the framing, build the chimney breast and so forth. Now, when you're building the chimney breast, you need to consider, first of all, what finishes you will have here. Will you have a mantle, or will you have just a three-sided black trim? And also, we will have a hearth here, whether it's marble, granite, whatever the choice. Now, in considering the width of the chimney breast, when installing a mantle, you have to consider the fact that the chimney breast would be wider than the mantle itself. So let's just say at least 50 mil wider on either side, so that's an extra 100 mil. Let's say the mantle is 1.4 meters, you would make the chimney breast at 1.5. So visually what you're looking at is the chimney breast, the mantle, hearth, fascia, fireplace. It has that, you're stepping in to look at the fireplace, the feature. So with the chimney breast, with the framing, I use metal stud and track. Some people prefer to use timber 4x2s, but I use metal because first of all it's always straight, and it's already fire rated. Now I suppose we can start framing.
As you can see, we have a copper pipe here, pre-installed. Now the idea for this is that if the customer later on prefers to have a gas fire, you can convert the wood fire into a gas fire, and it would be advisable to have your gas point available for a future installation of a gas fire. We can talk about that later. But as you can see, I've cut a penetration in this wall, and this is a cavity wall. That brings air into this combustible cavity to cool down the flues, and that is essential. Alternatively, if you don't have a cavity wall, you can also collect air from the outside part of the chimney breast which we're about to build. What I'm doing here is I'm marking out the framing for the chimney breast. I'm using a laser here. In this case, I've marked out the span and the returns. And once I've done that at the base, I transfer those points with my laser up on the ceiling and on the wall. And from there on, what we've got is our markings for the framework, and then we can continue. Now, I'm using actually stud work, metal stud and track, lightweight, 55mm. You can use timber. It's the same procedure, same application really, except one's metal and one's timber. I've got my bottom plate. I'm now going to fix my stud. I normally put one screw at the bottom of the stud, and then I go above high. My step ladder. You'll use your trusty level. Hold the level against the stud and level it. Right. Just the trick I'm going to share with you. Invariably you find that there is no stud behind this plasterboard wall. So what you can do with these metal studs, you can skewer the screws in. So instead of going straight, you start on one side and then you skewer the screws, and that stabilizes the stud. And what you do is you do it one on one side and one on the other side respectively, and you do it every 300mm down the stud, like so. You find that there is stable enough, but you've got to go all the way down. Now what I've done is I've cut the cornice a little bit further in case you want to put continue the cornice all the way around. But in this case, I won't be doing it. It'll just be a square, what I call a square set, where your chimney breast, the plasterboard wall, and the ceiling junction meet and squares off. Now the framing is done, except of course what I do is this last stud in the middle between the header here and the top plate at the top, I just slide it in, and I don't actually fix that. You can fix it if you want to, but I don't, because when I come in with my plasterboard, I use the plasterboard and fix it there. Yeah, so it's entirely up to you. But yeah, we're going to start sheeting now. When sheeting the chimney breast, prior to coming in with this second sheet here, it's always advisable to fill up behind the plasterboard with some masonry adhesive, and then put some masonry adhesive on the hebel blocks here prior to the second sheet on the face. And you'll find that once the adhesive cures, it'll be nice and solid and it won't move. You want this to be secured. When you're doing the plastering, I've finished the plastering now, but I always do one coat of base coat of plaster, and while that's drying, I do my termination or my cowling up on the roof. Now, anyway, after the plastering's done, you can continue to do what you need to do to finish the fireplace. But let me just remind you of the side access panel here. Do you remember we spoke about that copper pipe? You can put an access panel here for later installation of a gas fire, or you can alternatively just not do an access panel, and you can cut the plasterboard and then patch it. It's entirely up to you. Just another note. The distance between the top of the flange and the plasterboard needs to be a minimum of 50 millimetres. Or anything combustible, a minimum of 50 millimetres, top and the side. We've got the half down. Next, we work on the fascia and then the mantle. Then we can have a go at the fire. When installing the fascia, you can do it two ways. You can pre-drill the very corners up here, and then put a plug in the back of the wall, and then you can secure it that way. What I do is I actually silicone around the frame, and then I press the fascia against the flange, and then I just use like a huge, clothesline peg, if you will, and I just hold it in position like that while the silicone cures. And while that's curing, you can then work on your mantle, which we'll do next. I've got the mantelpiece in place. It's an easy application. It's a modular set. In fact, it's a Sahara-honed mantelpiece you can purchase from Jetmaster. It's a modular piece. It comes in 4 pieces. Easy to set up, easy assembly, and every mantle, comes with its own instructions. So, and also, I urge you to always refer to manual and your specifications or your data sheet. I've got the log pan in place, ready for the fire. Let's test this baby out. You get a whole lot of kindling, a whole lot of paper.